You're listening to the Send It Podcast with Andrew Rawls on World Talk Radio.
Grumman 7 Judah Bravo, ground, turn right on Bravo, runway 1 left, Bravo, and it'll merge with Alpha at Alpha 3.
The time to buy skydiving equipment is now. I see the long lead times in my industry, which is computer hardware. Still see entire American supply chain, from your favorite cup of coffee to automobiles, computer chips, cars, and yes, you guessed it, every skydiver's favorite material, nylon. There just seems to be shortages everywhere, and it doesn't take an economics degree to know that shortages and supply chain issues lead to inflation. As far as I'm aware of, none of the recreational skydiving equipment manufacturers, whether it be for canopies or rig container systems, manufacture their own textiles. Instead, they rely on companies like Performance Textiles and Galvanor to do so. Manufacturers buy the nylon on these massive rolls. When there's a shortage of supply, that affects lead times, and slowly over time leads to increased prices. I've noticed these prices typically come either later in the spring or in the early summer, but the truth be told, prices are subject to change at any time and for any reason. Given the long lead times across the skydiving industry, I've been pleasantly surprised that manufacturers have committed to the sales prices at the time of order. As again, with inflation and supply chain issues plaguing the American economy, it's not uncommon, particularly in information technology, for manufacturers to raise prices on distributors before the distributors ship the item to the reseller and onto the end user. The resellers can get caught oftentimes in the middle and ultimately are the ones that bear the terrible news to the end user, requesting more money, as since the time of the order, the cost of goods have increased. Which leads back to what I was talking about earlier on the show, and that is, if you have the financial means to do so, buy now what you plan on jumping 2 years from now. That's to say, if you're on a 210 canopy right now and you intend to downsize after another 300 to 500 jumps, you should consider ordering a 190 or even a 170 square foot canopy, as the price of raw materials such as nylon is about to skyrocket. Again, this all goes back to supply and demand, and there not being enough materials available to manufacture canopies and meet the needs of skydivers. Over the last couple of months, most of the top skydiving canopy manufacturers have shifted away from even stocking high-end canopies. They now seem to be focusing solely on custom orders. As you see in periods of domestic inflation where it's next to impossible to find a home sold at its market value, where you've literally got shanties where the agents are asking triple the current rate, and everything with any kind of potential or upswing are priced so far out or completely overpriced altogether that nobody wants them. In the same vein as residential real estate, amongst other tangible commodities, over the last 6 months, with the supply chain shortages, it's been next to impossible to find used canopies and container systems that are well maintained and priced correctly. The deals that once fell through the cracks no longer seem to, as the supply chain and lead times for new equipment has driven up the price of used gear. And insofar, we've only discussed canopies and container systems themselves, but what about the spare parts such as line sets? These are more often than not assembled by the manufacturer and packaged for resale. And yes, I've heard line sets in specific sizes are getting harder to find as well. I mentioned this already to a few of my close friends, but the skydiving industry seems to have been struggling mightily over the last 2 years. The number of fun jumpers and pack loads, as seen pre-COVID, just isn't there. And working in the skydiving industry without the military contracts and making a good living, it also isn't there. It's just not profitable. And given the current political landscape, those military contracts, I believe, aren't even likely to be there in the long term either. As you will see, the current administration cut spending on programs that are not deemed integral to the nation's defense. Moreover, I would expect in the coming months and years, when prices on commodities fully skyrocket, you're going to see a mass exodus of people leaving skydiving altogether, whether they work as instructors or if they're sport jumpers during the week or on the weekends. I've seen this personally, a lot of it lately, as the industry can't keep up with the surges in economic inflation. Drop zones oftentimes get a lot of flack for being, quote, tandem factories and taking up too many seats planes on aircrafts, which creates long wait times for fun jumpers if the drop zone isn't equipped with extra staff and multiple planes. Still, it's never bothered me, considering I tend to avoid zoo groups or jumping with lots of other people. Hell, though, at least with tandems, you're pretty much guaranteed to fly, and assuming there is room for you on the load, the only way I see long-term viability of a drop zone in this industry, in general, is if and only if there's a healthy tandem operation, as there are many more people outside of licensed jumpers who want to experience flight than those who already have.
You've just listened to Send It, a skydiving podcast hosted by Andrew Rawls on World Talk Radio. Send It is the #1 skydiving podcast on the planet, bringing listeners up-to-date information on all things sky sports. Be sure to visit senditradio.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our amazing bonus content and articles. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review. Until next time, 3, 2, 1. See ya.